In the talk this morning, I mentioned a little bit about, very, very briefly, on the Four Noble Truths. But the first noble truth is that there is discontentment, there is suffering. I use the word discontentment for 2,600 years. The word has been used as suffering, but it's only about, I don't know, 12 years ago or so, some very learned academics, in translating not the ancient Sanskrit but the ancient Pali, which is the actual language the Buddha spoke, they said they think it sounds more like discontentment or dissatisfaction rather than suffering. So I use all three, just to cover myself. So suffering, discontentment, or dissatisfaction. And the cause of that was our wanting, our lusting, our craving, and our attachments. So I'd like to explain that to you just a little bit. And the second noble truth. So what I mean when I talk about wanting, lusting, and craving. Well, let me give you a couple of examples at two different ends of the spectrum. Down this end of the spectrum, for example, we have teenagers down in the mall in Sunshine Coast. They're wanting and lusting and craving. What are they wanting and lusting and craving? They're wanting and lusting and craving acknowledgement from adults that they are individuals with an own mind. They're wanting and lusting and craving acceptance from their peers. They're wanting and lusting and craving enjoyment and happiness in their life. And they're probably wanting and lusting and craving an iPhone 12 and a pair of Nikes or something like that as well, I suppose. At the other end of the spectrum, but it's still wanting and lusting and craving. At the other end of the spectrum, we may have people like the members of ISIS. They too are suffering. They too have dissatisfaction. They too are wanting and lusting and craving. What are they wanting and lusting and craving? They're wanting and lusting and craving power, control, dominance, people to live their lives the way they believe people should live. Whether we agree with that or not, they're still wanting and lusting and craving. Okay? So, we sort of fall in the category somewhere down here. Attachments. There are a myriad of attachments. We all have our favourite attachment. Okay? Probably two of the most common ones I see today myself as I wander around this earth is that the first one is that people are attached to the desire that others will think well of them. Okay? And even now to the silly extent where people are going out and having medically, physically changing their bodies so they physically look better so people might like them more. They're attached to this desire that people think well of them. There's even that comedy show on TV for years, Everybody Loves Raymond, It's all about wanting other people to like you. But the other one that I see, which causes a lot of heartache and pain, is people become attached to outcomes. I want to allow myself to be happy until I achieve this. And the problem is that in a part of our human nature, what I set my goal for happiness is that far beyond of what I'm really actually able to attain. So I never really quite get there. So, and this starts to get us back into the cycle of discontentment and upset. And as we try to practice live our life in Zen, or we try to overcome these difficulties in life, obstacles get in the way. Obstacle gets in the way of our practicing our meditation. Obstacle gets in the way of our happiness in life. Obstacles get in the way of just our family, relationships, friendships, etc. The Buddha called these hindrances, and there's 5 of them. And they go, oh my goodness, there's 5. Other people think, oh, thank God there's only 5. It really depends on your point of view. But the wonderful thing about the hindrances is the Buddha gave us all the antidotes for each one. Unfortunately, in Buddhism, antidotes don't come in the form of a pill. They come in the form of an action. We actually have to do something. And that'd be where the difficulty sets in. So, let's have a talk about the hindrances. The first one is called sensory desire. This is probably the most dangerous and deadly of all the hindrances. This is the one that is responsible for addictions. High-fat foods, sugar addictions, alcohol, drugs, tobacco, etc. This is the one that is called, where we have an addiction to the senses. Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. Okay. It's the most dangerous one because these addictions can lead to sickness. Sickness can lead to disease, and disease can lead to death. So it becomes this is the most deadly of all. And unfortunately, it's also got the most difficult antidote. The antidote the Buddha gave us for sensory desire is letting go. Let me give you an example of what letting go is. I'll talk some more about it as we move through. Letting go, for example, or the lack of letting go. Just a little example being that you're driving home on Monday afternoon down the Bruce Highway, and this plumber in a big van pulls in front of you and almost wipes you out, and you go, idiot. Okay. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 2 o'clock the next morning, you're nudging your partner in bed, you should have seen this idiot today, he's going to kill me. It's now 10, 11 hours later, and it's still stuck in your head. You haven't been able to let it go, and it's churning up your stomach. But in relation to sensory desire, it gets even worse. Maybe we need a trigger system or a personal justification to maybe why we need to start to look at trying to let go. Maybe we look in the mirror and see what we've become, how it's affected us, or how it's affecting the people around us. Maybe we can use the thought of repugnancy to at least get us started on the moving to let go of what we've become. The most difficult of all the hindrances. I'll talk about it some more as we move through. The second hindrance, which seems to me personally to be the most popular hindrance, okay, that the most common hindrance of all is called ill will. Now, in ill will, this is when somebody says or does something that upsets us, and we start to develop ill will. This action or verb or whatever was being said against us, it starts to get caught up in our mind, and we keep role playing what was said, what was done, what he said, what I did, what she did, what I did, what I said, and it starts to roll. Every time we put our head on a pillow, there's this vision again, and it goes on and on and on. You can get to the stage where it starts to affect our sleeping habits for a start. It can affect our eating habits. It might even affect our pooping habits. And then we've unlocked the liquor cabinet, now it's affecting our drinking habits, and now we're back into sensory desire again. It could even get to the stage where we start to have these scenarios, or maybe revenge scenarios in our mind, just fantasies. Even though we might not even have the intent to take revenge, we start to have these fantasies in our mind, and it helps us sort of overcome a little bit. And the silly part of the revenge fantasies is 9 times out of 10, our revenge scenario we work out in our mind is 10 times worse than the first grievous offence committed against us. Okay? And every time we put our head out on the pillow, we think of the next one. If he says this, I'll say that. If he does this, I'll do that. And this goes on and on and on. The absolute crazy part about this is this person who has committed this perceived grievous offence against us, while all this is happening to us and our stomachs churning and our minds going, they're sound asleep, snug as a bug in a rug, not a care in the world. And here we are, either overeating or undereating. We haven't pooped for a week, all right? Okay. We can't sleep and it's all going wrong. The Buddha gave us a very, very effective antidote for ill will. And it's the practice of patience and tolerance. And the first thing is, how can I practice patience and tolerance against this individual who's just done this to me? Well, we look at it though, it's got very little or nothing to do with this other person. It's all about our happiness. It's all about our emotional contentment. It's all about us returning to our normal, quiet demeanour. But what happens? Our ego gets in the way. Goes, hang on. Why should we practice patience and tolerance? Why should I forgive or let go of this for that person? Our ego sits up there and gets in the way. We need to move that ego out of the way, because all we are really interested in is our own personal emotional contentment. I'll tell you a story. Before we were as busy as we are when we first opened in the first year or so, we did do a bit of a B&B thing, sort of thing for people between retreats. They still come to a bit of yoga meditation. And we started to get men coming, ring up and book in for a few days, come up here on their own. And thought, we now learned very quickly, when men do this, there's a problem. Because men don't take themselves away to the country for a couple of days. And the last chap who came, he booked in for 4 days. I thought, this is going to be a beauty. He came in the afternoon, he did yoga with Rose, and he started in with me the next morning. And after he finished meditation, he started to talk. He talked for a day and a half non-stop. So I had a fair idea of his situation. He worked in a big company. He had 400 people under him, one supervisor above him, and then the board of directors. And it was just one person above him that was giving him a hard time, to the extent that he hadn't worked for 3 months. He was on medication from the doctor, he was seeing a psychologist, and it was all going wrong in him. He was a gay gentleman, he'd been in a relationship for 10 years, and things had been tapering off for the last couple of years. They're really going downhill now in the last few months. So, eventually, I got an opportunity after a day and a half to say something. So I said, okay, well, let's talk about the first noble truth, suffering. He said, I'm suffering, brother. I said, good, okay. Let's talk about the second noble truth. What is it you're wanting and lusting and craving? He said, well, I want this guy to treat me like a real partner. I said, hang on a minute. You, me, we can't change this chap. All we can do is help you. The only person who can change him is himself. So we're going to look to find a way out of this for you. He said, well, good luck with that. I said, okay, no problem. I said, so, well, let's talk about the hindrances. It was obvious to me that you're really stuck in hindrance number 2, which is ill will. And I explained it all to him. He said, I've got some ill will, brother. I said, well, the good news is there's a good antidote for your will. That's the practice of patience and tolerance. He just looked at me and smiled and shook his head, you know. Okay. I said, well, maybe, and I explained to him the fact that it's not about this chap at work. It's all about your demeanour, your emotional contentment, your personal happiness. He sort of still shook his head, no. I said, well, the Buddha said that, this is one that I use a lot and Rose uses a lot, karma will do what karma will do. And we don't necessarily have to get involved. I said, did that help you? No. So the Buddha also said that our enemies, we should treat them like precious gems. It's because of their rarity, and these are the people in our life who give us the opportunity to grow as an individual. I said, did that help you? He said, no. Okay. Right. So we need to find a trigger system, a reason, a justification for you to overcome the ego stopping you from practicing patience and tolerance against this individual and also with yourself. Now, what he had told me was that every time I had a breath of fresh air and a cup of tea, he'd be on the phone either texting or talking to his partner back in Brisbane, and he's saying that things been getting more communication and getting better between them. His partner was actually somebody who meditates quite often. He had set up a room in their house, but our friend was saying, no, don't go funny on me, don't go funny on me. Okay. But now, having been doing some meditation with Rose and I, and explaining the benefits, etc., he was starting to have more communication, and things have been improving on better than they had been for some years. I said, well, maybe this is your justification. I said, so things are improving with your partner. I said, who do you think is responsible for that? He said, oh, you are. I said, no, I'm just the monkey in the middle. The person who is ultimately responsible for your relationship improving is this chap at work. If he hadn't been ugly and horrible and terrible, he wouldn't have gone to the doctor for medication, to the psychologist, he wouldn't be off work for 3 months, he wouldn't be here, and now you wouldn't be talking to your partner and things improving. I said, can you work with that? He said, I think I can. And he went home a reasonably happy man. Okay. And he contacts us on a regular basis and things are moving forward for him. So, lovely. Practice patience and tolerance. The third hindrance is called sloth and torpor. This is the dullness of mind and the heaviness of body. We have a name for these folks. We call them couch potatoes. Okay. There's a wonderful, wonderful antidote for sloth and torpor. It's energy, uplifting energy. But it's unrealistic to expect somebody caught up in sloth and torpor to jump up and start singing and dancing and go for a jog around the block. It's just not going to happen. They need the support of a family member or a good friend to start doing small things. Fresh fruit, vegetables, protein, a small walk, a bit further than the refrigerator, sit in the sun instead of the TV, and slowly, bit by bit, they'll come back. But it will take time. The fourth hindrance is called restlessness. This is the mad monkey mind. Okay, people zigzagging from one mango tree to the other, backwards and forwards. Okay, zigzagging through life, one business thing to another, one idea to another, one relationship to another. As soon as they get somewhere, they want to be somewhere else. It's interesting that before COVID, we used to have a lot of young international travellers come here on a thing called the Workaway program. I don't know if you've heard about that. They come here and be here for 7 days, and we feed them and accommodate them. In exchange, they would work 5 days, 5 hours a day around the place, gardening or whatever, logging and tugging, things that Rose and I can't do anymore. They'd come in here, down on the veranda, and go, wow, what a great view, like everybody says, and look across the valley, there's a little settled back of green grass at the side of the valley. How can I get over there? But you just got here. But how can I get over there? You know? I said, well, that's not real difficult. You walk down through Snake Gully, you know, you swim across Crocodile Creek, and then you got through the monkey forest and you're there. You've got monkeys in Australia. I said, yes. You would hear them every morning, cook, 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 cook. Cook monkeys, drive you nuts. As soon as people want to get somewhere, they want to be somewhere else. As soon as I come this way, and I go that way. One of the most disappointing things about people in a state of restlessness is they don't have any rear vision mirrors. And as they're zigging and zagging through life, they don't see the pain and the upset and the hurt they leave in their wake as they move along from one thing to another. And the rest will just stand back and go, well, what the heck happened there? And they're gone. The other interesting thing about people in a state of restlessness is that every time they zig and every time they zag, it's always the fault of something or someone else. It's never their own fault. Something has caused them to zig or zag. The trouble is they've been doing this now for 45 or 50 years, constantly zigging and zagging. The antidote for restlessness is the gaining of contentment. And the quickest and easiest way to gain contentment is through the practice of meditation. In fact, a little bit of meditation wouldn't hurt for all of these. Now, I was talking to you about the first one, sensory desire and letting go. I mentioned to you this morning during meditation, and I think I mentioned it slightly a little bit last night at our talk last night, about how the guaranteed positive outcome of practice of Zazen, the arising of the sensation of peace and tranquility in a reasonably short period of time. In a regular practice, usually average person 6 to 8 weeks. What I haven't told you is that there is a long-term positive outcome. It might be 10, 11, 12 months. What seems to happen over the longer period, with a regular resting of the body, calming of the mind, bringing the mind to a state of stillness, silence and clarity, over this longer period, it seems to ease the attitude and soften the ego. And when the attitude is eased and the ego is softened, the ability to let go just seems to drift in. You don't even know it's coming. Until one day something occurs that normally really gets under your skin and it just goes past you and it didn't really matter anyway. The fifth and final hindrance is called doubt. This is the one where people have difficulty in making decisions. They have the doubts about their own ability to make a good decision. So instead of making a good decision or a bad decision, they make no decision. And given time, as they see their workmates, people they knew from school, or family members making decisions and moving forward, getting married, buying houses, starting businesses, moving on, they start to see them, so they're still stuck back where they were when they left high school maybe 15 years ago. And they start to develop, also not only have this doubt, they also develop maybe a little bit of ill will. Not against these other people, but against themselves. They become frustrated and annoyed with themselves. And now not only dealing with doubt, they're also dealing with a bit of ill will and anger, directed inwardly. The antidote for doubt is the gaining of confidence. But like sloth and torpor, it's virtually impossible to do by yourself. You need the assistance of a family member or a good friend to help you get started. Small decisions, bit by bit. And as you make these small decisions, you get more and more confidence. Next time, a bit bigger decision, a bit bigger decision. But it takes time. Then there's these absolutely magical people who not only have the ability to hide their doubt from the world, they also have the ability to hide their doubt from themselves. And it seems to me the experience that I have had in coming across these people is 90% more of the time is their doubt about their own ability to maintain a relationship. I've seen it both in men and in women, but I feel it's predominantly in men, and they tend to build this invisible wall around their relationship for safety, okay? And to keep out unwanted intruders who might just come in, say the wrong thing, and upset the apple cart. The problem is these intruders keep coming in. Partners, family, partners, friends, partners, workmates, partners, buddies from school. They're banging into this wall all the time. Why don't they just go away and leave us alone and we'll all be okay? They keep coming in. So now not only has the wall builder got unknown doubt, now they're starting to develop ill will against these people who keep banging against the wall all the time. Maintaining this wall for years can create stress. And the quickest and easiest way to get rid of stress is a bit of sensory desire. Okay? So now they've unlocked the liquor cabinet and now they've got another problem running as well. So now they've got doubt, they've got ill will, and they've got the sensory desire going on. It's all happening. And what I've found with a lot of men who are in this situation, they seem to be very, very active. They're renovating the bathroom. They're doing up an old car in the garage. They've got a veggie patch down the backyard. They're running a business. It looks like restlessness, but it's not. It's just activity. Restlessness, the activity is not the problem. In restlessness, the attachment to the activity that's the problem. Can't stop doing. It's not the doing, it's the can't stop doing. In this doubt, it's just activity. And when suddenly the bathroom is finished, now they buy an old boat and they get it done up and on the harbour for Christmas. All this sort of stuff's happening. The silly part about this, the crazy part about this is if they put only half the effort they put into maintaining this environment into their relationship, they wouldn't have the problem in the first place. They can't see that. So, sensory desire, letting go. Ill will, patience and tolerance. Sloth and torpor, energy, uplifting energy. Restlessness, contentment, gaining of contentment. And doubt, the gaining of confidence. There's only 5. I remember a couple of years ago that we'd had this talk and a lady down the back and she's in tears and what's the matter? She said, I've got 3 of them. I said, the good news is you also now know the antidotes and you can work on this. The other good news is you can only have a maximum of 4. Okay, because you can't have restlessness and doubt. One is I can't stop doing, the other one is I don't know what to do. Okay? So that's the good news. Okay. So that is 5 hindrances. Do you have any questions at all?
How does the 5 hindrances work with the Noble Truths, the Precepts, and the Eightfold Path.
Okay. Well, I tend to shortcut from the second precept, the second Noble Truth.
Yeah.
Because when people are talking about, I've got this issue,
Yeah.
I can't say, well, go into your life now and use right speech, right actions, make the right efforts, have the right livelihood, and have the right aspirations and the right concentration. And by about 2035, you should be okay.
In your next life.
So now I usually cut from the second Noble Truth across to the hindrances, because these are like the obstacles that are getting in the way of our life right now today.
Yeah.
So the practice of the Eightfold Path is a time thing. Okay, it can take us time. We start with one, we move on to the next. The same with the precepts. I'll mention what the precepts are to you, in case you haven't heard of these. The 5 precepts of the Buddha are like the Buddhist version of the 10 Commandments. Okay, except there's only 5 of them. So statistically speaking, there's half as many, so it should be twice as easy. I'm sorry, it's not, okay? This doesn't work that way. The first precept of the Buddha is to abstain from the taking of life. Now this sounds very, very much like the 10th Commandment where it says, thou shalt not kill. But it's not. It's quite different. When Moses brought the Israelites out of Egypt after generations of slavery, and he's taking them to the promised land, they get to the Red Sea, and as you know the story, the Pharaoh changed his mind, thought, wait a minute, who's going to build the pyramids? Sends the army out going to these guys back. So as the army's coming, Moses raises his staff past the Red Sea, and you know the story from there, they get across there. Eventually they get to Mount Sinai. By the time they get to Mount Sinai, the Israelites are running amok. They're settling old scores, they're killing each other, they're building golden idols. What does Moses do? He goes up the mountain for a few days, up to Mount Sinai. Comes back 5 or 6 days later, carrying these 2 tablets. One of them with the 10 Commandments, one of which says, thou shalt not kill. And what thou shalt not kill means is, thou shalt not kill each other. The first precept of the Buddha, to abstain from the taking of life, simply means that, to abstain from the taking of life. And this is why in many cases, many Buddhists become vegetarian or maybe even go on to veganism in an attempt to reduce the impact on the taking of life. But I tell you, it's impossible. If you decide to have a tomato sandwich for lunch, well, let me do another one. I've heard it said that it's better to have a T-bone steak for lunch than a prawn cocktail for lunch. If you have a T-bone steak for lunch, 100 people have lunch and 1 life is lost. If you have a prawn cocktail for lunch, 1 person has lunch and 10 lives are lost. Only since the decimal currency came, before that was 12, so I guess we've saved 2, But anyway, that's one point of view. Okay. But the other point of view is, well, we come back to the tomato sandwich. So in my effort to be abstained from the taking of life, I'm going to eat a tomato sandwich for lunch. The problem is, in eating that tomato sandwich for lunch, hundreds of thousands of lives have been extinguished for you to eat that sandwich for lunch. Think about it. Farmer, just the bread. The farmer goes out, ploughs the field, plants the wheat. Microorganisms, earthworms, rodents, anything on the ground is terminated. He goes out a period of time later and sprays the wheat, and hundreds of thousands of munching insects are terminated. He goes out a period later to harvest the wheat. Anything that gets in the way of that harvester goes through that harvester. Rodents, dogs, cats, birds, runaway children, whatever gets in front of that harvester goes straight through that harvester. But all we're trying to do is to fulfill the first precept of the Buddha, to abstain from the taking of life, over tomato sandwich. It is virtually impossible. So if there's nothing we can do that doesn't have an impact, everything we do, no matter what we do, there is an impact on something, somewhere, some way, somehow, somewhere. And even if we're trying to abstain from taking of life by eating a tomato sandwich, we can't even do that. What do we do? What we do is we be mindful, be aware that lives have been extinguished for us to have our daily fare. This is one of the wonderful things about Catholicism. They sit down, they say grace, they acknowledge that something has happened here for us to have this meal. But talking about the T-bone steak and the prawn cocktail, some people take that as like a numbers game. Other people took it as sentient and insentient beings. A sentient being is a being like you and me. A being that has feelings, thoughts, care, comradeship, devotion, etc. And if you sit quietly and think about it long enough, you'll realise that pretty much we're talking about every warm-blooded animal on the planet, whether they're on the land or in the ocean. There are people who don't eat sentient beings. We call these people pescatarians, because they do eat insentient beings. An insentient being is for an animal that lives on its instincts. Fish, shellfish, reptiles, etc. A person who doesn't eat those either, we call them a vegetarian. Then we go the next step further. People go, well, not only am I not going to eat sentient or insentient beings, I'm also not going to partake of any of the products that come from either sentient or insentient beings. Today we call those people vegans. And then there's other people, and they just where they eat, and you get to draw the line in the sand, wherever you want to move it. You can always move it, but then there's people who draw the line in the sand like this, depending what's on the menu. It all comes down to our own personal decisions. And that's the first precept of the Buddha. The second precept is to abstain from taking what is not ours or not given. Yes, this means stealing, but it's more than that. It also means stealing somebody's thunder in the workplace. It means stealing somebody's feelings through manipulative actions, stealing somebody's thoughts or ideas. To abstain from taking what is not ours or not given. The third precept is to abstain from inappropriate speech. Yes, this talks about telling lies, but it's also about vain talk, rude talk, rumour mongering. The Buddha himself said, talking about rumour mongering, he said, "What I hear here, I do not say there, and what I hear there, I do not say here." So, rude speech, etc. The fourth precept is to abstain from immoral behaviour. To me, this is the most important one of all, because I believe the taking of life is immoral. The taking what is not ours and not given is immoral. Being rude and abusive is immoral. Okay? So it's not just pertaining to sexual behaviour. And the fifth precept, on a lot of people have trouble with these days, is to abstain from the ingestion of intoxicants and mind-altering substances. Some years ago I was in Sydney staying with my sister and her partner, and he wanted to asking me about meditation. I said, well, I'm only here for a couple of days, I really can't sit down and do a whole course of meditation with you. But I found a meditation group down around the corner. and not far, about a 5-minute drive. I took him down there, and as it turned out, this particular chap who was on this meditation session, he was a novice monk in Perth, in Western Australia, at the Bodhinyana monastery where Ajahn Brahm runs. I don't know if you know the name Ajahn Brahm. Okay, it's a Theravada monastery, and a bit bedazzled by Brahm. He's a year older than me, and at the age of 16 years old, as a pimply school kid in the Midlands of England, he decided when he left school at 17, he's going to learn to speak Thai and go and live in the northern forests of Thailand in a monastery there run by the man by the name of the great Ajahn Chah, which he did. When I was 17, I was riding surfboards and chasing girls around the beach. So I find it quite bedazzling that he had that in his mind at that age. He runs a beautiful big monastery in the south of Perth, a place called Serpentine. So, why was I telling you that?
I know where you're going. I know exactly where you're going.
Sorry?
Mind-altering substances.
Sorry?
No, the guy who the guy who taught your brother-in-law couldn't.
Ah, yes, okay.
Yes.
So this chap, he was a novice monk there, and Ajahn Brahm runs a thing called a rains retreat for 3 months. So you can go and stay there for 3 months. But if you want to stay longer, you have to become a novice monk. This chap became a novice monk, and he was there for 9 months. And I said, well, why are you not still there? He said, because I just couldn't go without a drink any longer after 9 months of abstaining. And I thought it was quite sad. But anyhow, he ran a really good meditation area. But what I also found interesting was he had a beautiful home unit right next door to the River Bay Hotel, which I used to be the bar manager of 50-something years ago. But anyway, that's another story. Okay, so a lot of people have difficulty with the last precept. So that's the 5. Abstain from taking of life, abstain from taking what is not yours and not given, abstain from improper speech, abstain from immoral behaviour, and abstain from ingestion of intoxicants and mind-altering substances. That's the 5.
Pretty good way to live your life.
And that's what Amanda's doing tomorrow. The precept ceremony, and is taking refuge. 2 o'clock tomorrow. Very good. Any more questions at all?
Is that kind of aspirational? Sorry if you're rude like that one. I guess I really like the idea of those precepts, and I like the idea of kind of trying to stick to them. But I think that often you would fall over, wouldn't you? Like if you got involved with gossip or
It all comes down to intent.
Yeah.
Particularly at the stage of taking refuge, I certainly don't expect somebody to be able to fulfill all 5. But you need to have a genuine intent to do so. Okay? And usually I find you can become a Buddhist anytime you like, right? In your own mind. By taking into your mind, I have the intent to practice the precepts. Start with the easiest one. Work on to the next one. And it's quite amazing, however, a relatively short period of time, maybe 9 or 12 months, how working on the precepts one after the other in the back of your mind, it changes the way you appear to yourself. You seem to gain more respect for yourself. I feel better about myself. I feel like a more honest and genuine person. And slowly you start to get better and better feelings about who I am. And it just starts to expand around your life and becomes exponential. Prior to ordination, yes, you now need to be able to fulfill the 5 precepts on a daily basis. And admitting also to everybody has a slip and a slide once in a while. But at ordination level, we should be pretty much on a day-to-day, everyday basis to be able to fulfill the 5 precepts.
Can I share something in relation, because I had your question, is that?
That's all right.
So at the end of the day, I'll review how my life has gone according to in like a prayer almost. I know Zen don't pray, but I pray who to, I don't know. And I will review the 5 precepts, and I can see where perhaps my speech hasn't been appropriate, or hey, what I did with that colleague was a lie, really. But then I also look at where I went right, and the longer I've been doing this, at the end of the day, I'm getting more right than I am wrong on my review. And so, like what Fusion says about that 12 months down the track, you might feel so much better about yourself as a human because you're actually consciously working on it. And that review at the end of the day shows me that I guess all of us have our slip-ups, but that there's a lot of really good that goes with taking it on, and then sometimes unconsciously it just you start to have responses that you wouldn't have had before consciously taking it on board. Yeah.
When you double up the practice with gaining of knowledge and understanding, there's wonderful outcomes. In Buddhism, we call this the trilogy of hearing. We study the Buddha's teachings to gain knowledge. We contemplate that knowledge to gain understanding. And we put that knowledge and understanding in the stillness, silence, and clarity of a meditative mind. Now, on any subject you like, astrophysics, plumbing, whatever, if you have knowledge, if you have understanding, and you have clarity of mind, the outcome on that subject is wisdom. Here we're talking about life. Right? Knowledge, understanding, clarity of mind, the outcome is wisdom. From wisdom comes emotional contentment. From emotional contentment comes peace of mind. And from peace of mind, quite magically, comes the ability to let go. Another way to learn to let go. For years, I ran a meditation society up in Early Beach, called the Whitsunday Meditation Society. Now, Early Beach is not a very big place. There's about, 9,000 residents and 22,000 German backpackers. And about 100 people a year would come through, a lot of travellers. And in many cases, I'd say to them, also, why are you here? What do you want? What are you looking for? And I often got the same answers all the time. Oh, I'm looking for peace of mind, or I'm looking for peace and tranquility. What a lot of people don't realise is that their peace of mind and peace and tranquility are 2 completely different things. For a start, peace and tranquility is a short-term outcome, and it comes from the practice of Zazen. You practice your Zazen, and you're guaranteed to get this arising of the sensation of peace and tranquility. But it's only a short-term outcome. Let me give you an example. You're going to a meditation evening, all right, with some like-minded people in your suburb. You come away with the sensation of peace and tranquility has arisen within you. You're driving home, it's all warm and fuzzy. You open the front door, the TV's blaring, the kids are screaming, and your partner's going, where the heck have you been? It's like a madhouse here. What just happened to your peace and tranquility? It's gone. But you can get it back. Maybe not the next time you do meditation, maybe not the time after that, but the time after, it will come back. And my personal experience has been over the years that it's the periods of time as it stays seems to get a bit longer. In fact, it gets to the stage where it doesn't feel as though the period of stay time is longer, but the period without time is shorter. But nevertheless, it's temporary. It comes and it goes. Peace of mind, on the other hand, is a lifelong, permanent outcome because it comes from a different place. It comes almost from an academic place. Study to gain knowledge, understanding, put into stillness, silence and clarity of a meditative mind, The outcome is wisdom, emotional contentment, and peace of mind. Let me give you an example of this. When you first went to school, ages 6 or 5, whatever it was, 7, the teacher said, all right, class, I want you to know that 2 and 2 makes 4. Yeah, well, thanks, miss. She says, no, I want you to understand. 2 and 2 makes 4. And now today, and for the rest of your life, you will have peace of mind that 2 and 2 makes 4. It's something you learned on an academic level. And that's the difference between the two. And people get them confused. They think they're both the same. They're not. And we call that the trilogy of hearing: knowledge, understanding, meditation. Interestingly, I mentioned to you this morning about the 3 different traditions of Buddhism: Theravada, Tibetan, and Zen. There's also 3 different schools of thought. The 3 different schools of thought are called Theravada, Mahayana, and Hinayana. Theravada, yes, that's the chaps in Southeast Asia with the yellow robes. Their approach to Buddhism is looking for the attainment of enlightenment. Okay? And that's their goal. Fine. In Mahayana is both Tibetan Buddhism and Zen. Tibetan Buddhism and Zen, we're like cousins in the Buddhism, all right? We both come from the same spot. They're learning to come from the same place in India originally. So we're like cousins. We're both in what they call the Mahayana. And the concept of the Mahayana is not necessarily looking for the outcome of enlightenment, but rather we are looking for the outcome of Buddhahood. And the outcome of enlightenment with the Theravada, they're looking for the outcome of enlightenment to believe they step into a state after nirvana, which means you get to step out of this systemic or consistent cyclic rotation of the samsara. Samsara simply means the wheel of life. Birth, life, sickness, disease, rebirth, and around we go again. And you get through enlightenment, you get to step out of that into a state of bliss. However, in the Mahayana, we're not looking for enlightenment, to step out. We're looking for the attainment of Buddhahood. So to be here again and again and again, to be a benefit to others, to help other people in their search for happiness and enjoyment and emotional contentment in their life. Hinayana is something else altogether. Hinayana is still looking for enlightenment, but through mantras, prostration, chanting, etc. They're still looking for enlightenment. And that's the differences. The other difference is that with Zen, in relation to Tibetan and also Theravada, in Tibetan and Theravada, they're looking for knowledge, understanding, and backed up by meditation. In Zen, we turn that around. We are practicing meditation backed up with knowledge and understanding. Now, I know that sounds same but different, but our focus is on the meditation and the mindfulness backed up by the gaining of knowledge and understanding. Slightly different. So much time for a cup of tea. Do you have any questions before you go for a cup of tea?
You ever considered putting this on a whiteboard?
No, but I'm putting it on a video.
Oh, and a whiteboard on the video? I'm one of those visual learners. I need to follow paths.
Yeah. I need a big whiteboard.
I think it's on the booklet you gave us last night. I think there's a bit of it in there.
What did that
No,
do?
not where I've got to so far.
Oh,
I'm on page 19. But
I
Yeah.
don't know, being a slow learner, it takes me a while to absorb it. Like, as in, I've got to come back 6 times. You know, like it doesn't, for me.
We're not saying you're a slow learner,
Yeah,
but it's definitely seeping in.
yeah, just no amount of reading it or once or having it in front of me. Every time I come, there's a different layer to the learning. but through listening. I don't know. But it is. It's a spiritual practice with an intellectual focus that encourages you to question it, which is quite. That's taken me a while to get my head around.
In the Chan tradition in China, they talk about doubt. They want you to have doubt. They say small doubt brings small questions. Small questions bring small answers. Big doubt brings big questions. Big questions brings big answers. No doubt brings no answers, no questions. So they talk about doubt. And that's what the Buddha said many times. Do not take on faith what I tell you. Investigate and prove it for yourself. Okay?
For me though, it's like knowing, intellectually knowing, but I don't get it until I sort of know it. Somehow it resounds within me. So
I understand.
So what I'm getting now is just a lot of knowingness, but it's not knowing. You know what I mean? It's not. I can't think of two different words, but intellectually I know. I know one of the psychology books, they talk about aha experience. Aha, that's what that means. Aha, I get that now.
Yeah.
You know, so knowing it and getting this aha, I really know it now. I know what it's about.
It makes sense.
It makes sense, yeah.
We have to also remember too, we've been raised in this Western education system, okay, which has the wonderful thing about that education is that it does make us question things, okay, but we do work on an intellectual level, okay, and particularly when something new that hasn't been in our society for the last 100 years, it's now creeping in more and more. A lot of people are skeptical, and they work on intellectual. If you go into Asian countries where Buddhism has been there since the day they were born, there's no question. It's just how it is, you know. So it's good that we question. It's good that we intellectualize, because once we understand, then we now I understand. I'm going in that direction. Yeah.
And I think maybe in some of those Asian countries, it is normal. It's normalised in conversation. If I go in the group of friends that I go around, and I start having these conversations, they look at me as if I was, what on earth is she talking about now?
Yeah, what's wrong with Judy?
That's right. What did she take this weekend?
Yeah.
I want what she's on.
Yeah, what are you smoking? Yeah, look, I understand. Yeah.
So it is about coming and just doing it again and again and again until it's so.
As I said to you too, last night, that I also do run a session on Sunday mornings, and you'll be invited to join that. And a lot of the ladies come on with a blank screen. I'm sure they got their Sunday morning face on or something, or they're still sitting in bed with a cup of coffee. Or
That's me. I'm still in bed.
That's not a problem at all, and you'll be more than welcome. It also gives you an opportunity to not only hear a bit more, but also it gives you one more meditation a week, makes life, etc. So I hope that works for you as well in the future. So it's 3:00, time for a cup of tea, and I'll see you around the dinner table a bit later on.
Thanks, Fish. That was great. Thank you.